I'd like to bring this meeting of PSTA, the May meeting, May, I don't know what month I'm in today, to order, please. And before we do the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, I would like to ask for a moment of silence for the repose of the soul of our beloved friend, John Maroney, a remarkable man who will be horribly missed here on earth, but a true angel now in the arms of our Lord in heaven. Please join me in a moment of silence. Commissioner Barkley, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. We do have one public comment card, which I will, you'll all have an opportunity if you so wish to speak. But right now, I'd like to ask Bill Johnson to please come forward. State your name and address, please, for the record. You know the drill.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and members of the board. I am Bill Johnson, 2694 Redford Court West in Clearwater. I'm here today in reference to a document that I left on the dais for each of you, asking the board, the PSTA board, to take formal action today to reinforce the Forward Pinellas recommendation to the Florida Department of Transportation to incorporate pedestrian crossings every 1/4 mile during US 19 reconstruction. Without this, reconstruction hurts transit riders and will impede transit-oriented economic development along this very important commercial corridor. And that is my request. Hopefully you'll be able to take action on that in your board meeting today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. We have a Forward Pinellas report coming right up. And now we are on awards and recognition, and I would like Debbie Leos, please, to come forward.
Good morning. I'm going to have Michael Hansen start us off this morning on this special award.
Good morning, board members. My name is Michael Hansen. I'm the Director of Finance here at PSTA. This morning, I would like to take a moment to recognize the retirement of one of our long-term employees, Ms. Stephanie Overton. Stephanie, why don't you come up here? Who's retiring after 34 years of service. After working in Pinellas County Supervisors of Elections Office and Pinellas County Commissioner's Office, Stephanie began her career in transit in November of 1983 with PSTA, shortly after the state legislature created the authority. Stephanie began as the information and phone clerk in the marketing department, serving as the receptionist where she did ticket sales, distributed bus schedule information, and answered other general PSTA inquiries. Next, she served as a clerk in the finance division, where she was responsible for maintenance, payroll, ticket sales, and various other financial duties. Thus began her finance career here at PSTA. Numerous titles and many progressive positions later, she worked with the Director of Finance myself, and she has been a key contributor to our award-winning budgets and comprehensive annual financial reports. In these last months, Stephanie's truly been a team player shared with marketing, helping them with administrative duties, coming up with many great ideas for communicating with the public, and those ideas have been implemented.
Stephanie is known for her love of competition and marksmanship, and her accuracy in shooting competitions, earning her the nickname of Annie Oakley of PSTA. She is well known for her local, state, and regional championships in the pistol, rifle, and shotgun. Her performances are very impressive in the cowboy, cowgirl competitions. which emphasizes her speed and accuracy. And I think that goes to show how well she also does with our budgets, with our CAFRs. And we want to congratulate you on this very impressive career in your 34 years of service. So thank you so much, Stephanie. We're going to miss you.
And next, we have a very special presentation about PSTA's successful hosting of the APTA International Bus Rodeo and Conference. I actually had the great honor of attending the conference myself, along with board members Joe Barkley, John Tornga, and Richard Bennett. PSTA's Transportation Director, Jeff Thompson, will introduce some very special guests and show a video on all the great things that happened during the conference.
Thank you.
Please continue.
Appreciate that, Shannon. We had a great event, board members. On May 6th, 2018, transit professionals gathered from around North America at PSTA to compete in an international rodeo. The best operators from 88 properties competed against one another, driving our bus through a series of obstacles, testing driving skills on a timed course. Maintenance teams made up of 3 maintenance mechanics competed to solve problems on various bus mechanical systems to test their knowledge of problem solving and technology applications. More than 1,400 people attended this rodeo on Sunday, which according to APTA representatives was the largest and greatest bus rodeo in the history of APTA. We're very proud of that. I'd like for you to meet and congratulate our PSTA bus operator, Nehemiah Guerra, who is here with us this morning. Nehemiah, would you come up, please? Who placed 4th in the 35-foot bus competition. Nehemiah was in the 35-foot bus competition. There's a 40 and a 35-foot. They break it down by size. And he was 4th place out of 21 drivers in that competition. Also, we have 2 of our 3 PSTA maintenance team members here today, Bobby Ferris and Tyler Johnson. Would they come forward, please, along with Henry Lukasik? Our 3rd team member, Paul Levisky, was in Fort Myers attending training and couldn't be here with us this morning. So our congratulations to our maintenance team and our bus operator who made a fine showing at the International Rodeo. And right now I'd like to take a minute and show you a video of what that's about in case you've never seen one. So let's watch this video together.
They're going to do what we call the serpentine.
Things got rolling this month when PSTA hosted the 2018 International Bus Rodeo.
If you touch a cone, it's as good as knocking it over.
1,400 attendees gathered to watch more than 80 bus operators from across North America compete for the title of International Champion. The competition is an opportunity for drivers to showcase their technique and skill through a challenging time obstacle course. And for some, it was 15 minutes of fame. PSTA bus operator Nehemiah Guerra represented Pinellas County in the competition, earning a 4th place win for PSTA.
That was amazing. Congratulations.
Inside the building, Bobby Ferris, Tyler Johnson, and Paul Levesque represented PSTA and the national maintenance portion of the rodeo, working together to diagnose and repair a bus engine in record-setting speeds. On the other side of Tampa Bay, the APTA Bus and Paratransit Conference kicked off at Marriott Waterside. Transit professionals from across the country gathered to hear from industry leaders, including some PSTA staff members, on areas of innovation, technology, and safety. The latest in technology was also on display at the Vendor Expo, where PSTA's Flamingo Fares app was featured, along with the latest in signage and wheelchair lifts.
As new technologies come on,
The APTA Bus and Paratransit Conference is where industry leaders flock to innovate and create the future for all things transit.
PSTA is often leading the country in new innovations in technology in transportation. So this was a really exciting time for us to showcase what we're doing here in Pinellas County.
Quite an event. Thanks to all of our employees, including our operator and maintenance team, for a fine showing at the rodeo. Our employees were on, as the video mentioned, the presentations at the conference on panels and presented some subjects. And our volunteers who work the rodeo, we certainly did an incredible job, and we couldn't have done it without all the help that we had of our employees over that weekend. So thanks to all. And thank you, board members, for your time this morning. We appreciate it. And in conclusion, just to give you a flavor of who was here, the first place overall grand champion for the event was WMATA in Washington, D.C. Second place went to the Regional Transportation District in Denver, and Orange County, California came in third, just for your information. Thank you.
Yes, Brad.
I would just like to express my thanks again to the PSTA staff, especially to Jeff Thompson, our Director of Transportation, and Henry Lukasik and his team. It took a entire organizational effort to put on this rodeo and have the 1,400 people from around the North America come to here and put on a good show. It was really an incredible logistical event, but also a very positive event for PSTA, I think. A lot of our folks who don't get to go to conferences or travel and see other transit professionals got to meet a lot of them and say, oh my gosh, you know, the bus drivers in Hawaii are pretty much the same as the bus drivers here at PSTA, and we're actually maybe very competitive with Washington, D.C. and every place. So it was really a very energetic thing for PSTA to host.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. And in the spirit of true transparency, I said to Nehemiah, well, driving on the roads in Pinellas County must be great practice for the rodeo. But while you have passengers on board, please don't drive like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, all right. Okay, and now we're ready for the Transit Riders Advisory Committee update. Gloria, welcome. Please, you know the drill. Please say your name and your address for the record.
Hi. Oops. Good morning, Chair Rice, Mr. Miller, and esteemed board members. The Transit Riders Advisory Committee met on May 15th of 2018. Our first information item was Shpresa Zenku and Mike Hansen from Finance presented the latest update on the beta test of the Flamingo fare card. And as you know, PSTA wants this new fare system to be used as extensively as possible so that any technical or user issues can be resolved before the full launch. And we currently have 8 track members who are involved in this beta test. We were given the opportunity to express our observations and our questions, and we very much look forward to the rollout of this very important regional program. I'm sorry, still not, oh, okay, there you go, thank you. Sorry. Then Juan Louvian, Community Engagement Liaison, updated the Transit Riders Committee on what our subcommittee had as discussions on potential additional track initiatives. And following the track meeting, we then had a second meeting of our subcommittee on these initiatives. And again, Mr. Louvian led an extensive discussion of the improvement areas and helped the subcommittee to come to a consensus to focus on 2 specific improvements, both dealing with back and forth communication between PSTA and riders. The first was highlighting what happens when there are detours or events and how PSTA communicates that to riders on specific routes, but maybe much broader than that in terms of communication. And then the second was about how we communicate back to PSTA in terms of making sure that shelters are clean, identifying shelters that need attention. The PSTA departments responsible for these 2 initiative areas will present information items at upcoming track meetings and facilitate discussions on improving specific PSTA procedures and processes around these issues. The next track meeting will be held on June 19th, and as always, we invite you to attend. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for all of your hard work, Gloria. Are there any questions? No? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And next is our local coordinating board update by Brian Scott. Brian?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome.
The local coordinating board met on May 15th at Forward Pinellas' offices. Probably the main topic of discussion was the Tri-County LCB pilot program for regional paratransit trips. There is a Tri-County LCB that is made up of the LCBs of Pinellas, Pasco, and Hillsborough counties that would like to submit a grant application to Florida DOT to fund regional paratransit trips. As an example, Pasco County to Moffitt Cancer Center, or to support Pasco County TD customers that might be going to the Pinellas VA Center. An application would be filed next January and possibly awarded in the fall of 2019. After an informative discussion, the Pinellas LCB supported the application for the pilot program with the caveat that PSTA, as the Community Transportation Coordinator, would ultimately have to approve a local match funding required for the pilot. This matching requirement could be around $25,000 for PSTA. Results will be reported from each county during the July 12th Tri-County LCB meeting, which T-BARTA has offered to host. Then I was reelected to another term as vice chair of the LCB. And then Ross Silvers provided the CTC update regarding the Flamingo Regional Fairs program, including showing everybody a Flamingo smart card and explaining how the system would work and benefit TD bus riders as well. And we also discussed how that Flamingo Fair program might also be able to supplement, or that platform might be able to be used for the LCB regional paratransit trip program. And then Sarah accepted feedback on the draft TD infographic, and then Ross continued with an update on the TD late shift. And the next meeting for the LCB is going to be September 11th at Forward Pinellas office. So that concludes my report.
Thank you very, very much, Mr. Scott. And now we're prepared for the Forward Pinellas update. So Forward Pinellas met in May, and on May 9th, and there were multiple presentations that were given during this very lengthy meeting. There were reports on 2 Forward Pinellas land use and economic analyses, one in Largo and one in Tarpon Springs. These studies look to identify market potential for redevelopment. The next steps identified include strategies to consolidate parcels, identify investments to improve travel safety for all users, and improve multimodal connectivity and invest in placemaking improvements. Creating safety and accessibility for all users in the future will be necessary for development, and that goes for all of Pinellas County. Another US 19 presentation was on the US 19 Express Bus Concept Plan Study. The study looked at employment and commuting patterns along US 19 and identified 3 potential routes going from North Pinellas and West Pasco to the Gateway area, and 3 potential routes from South Pinellas to Gateway. 3 preferred concepts were selected: a limited stop service from South Pinellas to downtown St. Pete and the Gateway via 34th and 4th Streets. Another primarily on 34th Street from South Pinellas to the Gateway, and a third express bus route from Holiday to Gateway. These concepts will be further developed by PSTA and Forward Pinellas as part of the Community Bus Plan and Long-Range Transportation Plan. During the discussion on this item, board members noted that the 90-minute service time discussed may not qualify in residents' minds as express bus. FDOT, the Florida Department of Transportation staff, presented the department's plans for constructing interchanges and frontage roads north of State Road 580 and addressing 7 projects. Most of the projects are fully funded for design. Right-of-way and construction are fully funded for some of the projects. FDOT staff provided an update on the pedestrian overpass north of Hard Boulevard, which has an estimated construction cost of $4.8 million. Board members emphasized the importance of constructing frontage roads with non-automobile users in mind and to design them with a complete streets approach. The Regional Transit Feasibility Plan, as you all have heard spoken about quite often, has identified a catalyst project of a bus rapid transit system along the I-275 corridor from St. Petersburg to Wesley Chapel, 41 miles. The Hillsborough MPO recently voted to do a peer review study of the plan, which could delay implementation. More to follow on this issue, which is turning out to be quite important for Pinellas County as well as for Hillsborough. The Forward Pinellas Board discussed the Hillsborough MPO vote and then voted unanimously to support the full multi-county RTFP, Regional Transit Feasibility Plan project, with a potential first phase of the project running from downtown St. Pete to West Shore Tampa International Multimodal Center area. If Hillsborough would decide not to go forward with its segment of the project, we would at least have that portion completed for our residents. The RTFP and its place on the regional priority list was the center of discussion on May 11th TMA Transit Management Agency Leadership Group meeting. More on that in a few minutes. The Long-Range Transportation Plan, the board received an update on that plan, which is currently in the data development and scenario projection phases. The 2045 projection for population increase in the county is going to be a more aggressive projection than the previous long-range transportation plan, given the increase in population between 2010 and 2017. A survey for the regional portion of the plan will be released in the coming months. I know that's a lot of data, and I apologize for the lengthiness of the report, but it's hard to summarize a 4.5-hour meeting in a couple of minutes and to give you the meat of it. But it's an important subject, and I think we all need to be aware. So thank you for your indulgence on that. My next report is on the Tampa Bay Area Regional Transportation Authority update. Oh my goodness, where to begin? I am just so proud of PSTA and the work that we are doing with our partnerships throughout the region, because we have been lauded with leadership and praise accolades for a couple of months now, as PSTA has authorized our TBARTA board chair, Jim Holton, to work with PSTA's experienced finance staff, led by Chief Financial Officer Debbie Leos, to assist the TBARTA staff, which is very small, with assessing federal transit funds. The entire TBARTA board expressed its appreciation to PSTA for its assistance and its incredible analysis of where we are financially and how we get to the next step of where we need to be the true leader of transportation efforts in the region. And I want to thank our CEO, Brad Miller, for being so diligent about providing this assistance to TBARTA, and to Debbie especially for your analysis. It's been invaluable, so thank you very much. The TBARTA board also approved a letter of engagement with Krauthammer and Associates to begin a TBARTA executive director search. A schedule for the search is being developed and is expected to be completed by the next TBARTA board meeting. And I feel very comfortable in sharing that we are very anxious to speed up that process and get this new person on board ASAP. We've got a lot of big work to do. The board approved entering into an agreement with Bryant Miller Olive, PSTA's counsel, Alan Zimmett's firm, for special counsel services to TBARTA, which will also be invaluable going forward because they have such a wealth of resources within their firms that we'll be able to draw on, right?
Right.
And the Florida Department of Transportation Secretary, David Gwynn, has been remarkable in his support about how important it is for our region to come together with one voice and one region in order to position ourselves properly for federal funding. And he was very forthright about how much he appreciated the legislature specifically identifying TBARTA as the lead agency to approve and implement the Regional Transit Development Plan. There is a Regional Transportation Leadership Workshop on June 1st at St. Petersburg Collaborative Labs. TBARTA is hosting that workshop to collect input on Phase 2 of the MPO Regional Coordination Study. The workshop will focus on specific issues MPO faces in our region and use examples of success learned through consultant research on peers to inform a path to better results. The registration is open to May 25th. And about this workshop, this is what I would like to say to the elected officials sitting here and out there, if there are any. You may want to designate a person to sit in your place at the collaborative lab, if that's possible. I saw Whit walk in, and I'm assuming it would be okay, because this workshop now conflicts with Commissioner Maroney's funeral services, and I venture to say that most of us will be there and not at the Transportation Leadership Workshop, but it's a very, very important workshop, and we surely need to have it videoed or make sure that somehow we can get the input afterwards. So, now for the TMA report, which is not on your agenda, but I just want you to say that we had a very spirited meeting, and I've got a full report here which goes on for 3 pages, but suffice it to say that at the end of the very lengthy meeting, I'm not exactly sure what it is that I know what we were trying to do. I'm not comfortable sitting here today telling you that we got that accomplished. I know we have a long way to go. The Hillsborough MPO in asking for that peer review has done their very best to slow this process down. And throughout my long career in public service, I learned that that's what elected officials usually do when they don't want to make a tough decision. So I think in an effort to provide as much leadership as we can for the Florida Department of Insurance, we need to stay very united and continue moving forward with the plan that we have developed here, and work with FDOT to ensure that we find a way to move forward. It doesn't seem quite right that one entity can just stop the whole process that's in the best interest of our citizens. But we all know squirrely things happen in the world of our political arena these days, so we must stay very focused, and I look forward to bringing back more information to you at our next meeting. And now for the consent agenda. Is there anyone who has something to pull? Oh, and before I get to that, for other members that were on either Forward Pinellas or the TMA that were there, do you have any input to add to my comments? Please feel free at this time. David?
No, well, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I think your summary kind of hit the nail on the head. We've got, there's an awful lot going on, whether it's at our transit discussions or planning or within the county, much less the regional effort. So this program, this regional transit plan that we've been working on for well over a year was, and really not pun intended, but we were on track to move this in a very positive direction as a really impact project. And I thought that was what we were all on board with. It was interesting that when they made that decision to get a peer review and we critiqued it, that we were the ones that were criticized for taking shots at Hillsborough County. And I thought, you know, this is not what this is all about. This is about creating a project that galvanizes this region and it generates some excitement that we can all be a part of. Whether it's a little piece down in St. Petersburg or one up in Wesley Chapel, it's all talking about this spine that really kind of touched everybody in this area. And so I just thought that we were on the right path, that we were doing some good things, and so I'm a little bit, like you, disappointed in the direction that we are heading as a region. And I think to your point about one region, one voice, it's really important. And so I don't think we're going to get where we need to be without Hillsborough getting on board, so we're going to have to be good partners and be patient, and at the same time move our things forward as fast as we can. So thank you for your report.
Thank you very much for those comments. Anyone else? Commissioner Rice?
Yes, thank you, Chairwoman. I think it's also important to point out, I share the disappointment with Hillsborough commissioners failing to recognize the word regional and perhaps maybe not even understanding the word feasible. But I think it's important that when we think of or characterize that opposition at this point in time, it's not all of Hillsborough County. It's a few commissioners, but the business community in Hillsborough, and as I understand it, the chambers in Hillsborough County, there's business leaders there that are very supportive of this plan. And so I think that further isolates some of these commissioners who are the most outspoken about it. And I just think it's important to mention that there are other leaders on the other side of the bay that want to continue with the regional effort.
Yes, and thank you for that, because that is absolutely the truth. And so I remain hopefully optimistic that we will continue moving forward in spite of the challenges. If it was easy, it would have been done 50 years ago. Did you?
I think Commissioner Tornga.
Oh, Commissioner Tornga. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No problem. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I agree with everything that was said about the meeting. And I wanted to add one positive part to that was added, but I just want to emphasize it. And that is that not only did we challenge it, we challenged on a very positive note. And as it relates to PSTA, we moved that PSTA concept just a little bit further. And PSTA, I think, comes out very, very strong. And I think if we all remember that we are working with FDOT David Gwynn's organization, who has really reached out to us. And I think some very positive things can come out of this. They realize that what we are attempting to do is for the region, but also for our own Forward Pinellas, or for our own MPO here, and for PSTA for the transportation side. I think we came out on a very positive note. That study needs to be done if we're going to go after a premium transit study, and we're doing it properly, and we're doing it correctly, and we're doing it as we laid out, and it is supported by FDOT. And so I really feel very positive. We stayed steady with our vote and remain so. So a compliment to I think to Forward Pinellas, compliment to the TMA, and then a compliment for PSTA. I think it was a very good meeting that way, and a good comment you made about the Hillsborough. We'll make it. We'll stay focused.
I agree with you. Thank you for the emphasis, Commissioner Torga. Brad, would you like to give us any updates on where we are with our federal application?
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
We do have quite a good representation on the PSTA board on Forward Pinellas. I think there are seven members of the PSTA board that are on Forward Pinellas, and then I think all of the folks that made it up to Land O' Lakes for the TMA meeting are sitting here today too, from Pinellas County. One of the things that I think will help, as Commissioner Torga said, is the work that we're doing with TBARDA. By helping out the TBARDA staff in taking advantage of the expertise that we have in our finance department to apply for and manage federal grants. We are now, as the chair mentioned, helping TBARDA draw, and working with Forward Pinellas to draw down several $1 million in grant funds that can be used to support TBARDA. I think this is very important to give TBARDA a solid financial foundation. As you know, the state legislature approved of this regional transit feasibility plan to be led or implemented by TBARDA. And it's going to be difficult for TBARDA to do that if they don't have any money or they don't have any solid staff. The TBARDA board has been very diligent about hiring a recruiter, looking for an executive director, and building that staff. And if we can provide assistance by giving them the financial background, I think that'll help get a very solid candidate for the executive director of TBARDA. And then it'll help lead this organization so that it can lead this plan. The other benefit of it, I think, is that it is, as Commissioner Torga mentioned, helping the Florida DOT. PSTA is able to help the Florida DOT. Secretary Gwynn has shown his support. Obviously, he wants to implement the legislature's request to have TBARDA lead this plan. He's put $5 million into the FDOT work program for the next phase of this project, but he's not too excited about giving the $5 million to an organization, a limited funded organization, or to a region that still has some things to be worked out between Pinellas, Hillsborough, and Pasco. At least we can help out with the solidification of a strong TBARDA, and that may also give a byproduct to Commissioner Johnson's comments earlier. Maybe goodwill by PSTA and Pinellas County in helping FDOT with this. Maybe that'll get us a better US 19 project up in Clearwater, hopefully. It can only serve to help. We are specifically trying to make sure that TBARDA accesses existing federal funds that they can, and we're working diligently with FTA and Forward Pinellas, thanks to Sarah and Witt for helping us too on that, in time by this summer, so that number one, when we have our triennial reviews, we don't jeopardize any of the funds and lose the funds to the region, and number two, to set up TBARDA for future funds that might be allocated by the state.
Excellent. Thank you, Brad. And now we'll move to consent, and I ask again, are there any items to be removed from consent?
Move approval.
Second.
All right, before we open the voting board, I would like our counsel, Alan Zimmett, to read the title of the resolution, please.
Resolution 1805, a resolution of Pinellas Suncoast Transit Authority authorizing the chief executive officer to terminate a lease agreement between the state of Florida Department of Transportation and the Pinellas Suncoast Transit Authority for a park and ride lot in Oldsmar, Florida.
All right, would you please open the voting card? One very much. And next, we have our action item to approve projects. And Debbie, could you please lead us through this program of projects with explanations and answers to any questions that may have been submitted?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, everybody.
Morning.
FTA requires all grantees like PSTA to publish a list of the proposed projects that will be funded by the federal government. Not only are we required to publish the list, we are required to hold a public hearing, which we did last week, and we have received no comments or concerns either before, during, or after that public hearing. In addition, we are requiring approval of the board of this proposed program of projects. We have three basic funding sources for our federal formula funds. As you can see, the largest of which is our 5307 money at $13 million. This $13 million goes to a variety of capital needs that PSTA has, including our preventative maintenance, which is operating. I'm going to highlight a couple of the areas in here, one of which is preventative maintenance. We take a portion of our monies each year, that $13 million, and put it to operations. What I'm very proud of is over the number of years that Brad has been here, we have held that number basically steady. That allows us to put more money towards capital projects and not become dependent on it for operations. In addition, we have something a little unique in here this year, and it's $620,000 to go towards automatic passenger counters. These counters are on approximately 40% of our buses right now, and this project will bring it to 100%. It's an invisible infrared light that it comes down and it'll be able to count the passengers, being able to tell if they're boarding or alighting. What's important about this project is right now we basically get statistical data on a sampling basis. This will give us enough information and accurate data that I think going forward, this will also help to increase the amount of formula funds that we get, which is very important going forward. We also have our security access system replacement. Currently, the system and the software that we have in place predates this building. The software can no longer be supported, and we will be going forth with that project in this coming year. We also received some funding from our Section 5337, a small amount, but not unimportant, of about $7,200. And I actually have to give credit to Pam Wrights, my grants manager. A couple years ago, she discovered that we were eligible for this money, and we've been getting it ever since. We also this year we'll be getting about $1.8 million for bus and bus facility funds. This will also go towards the replacement of buses. We also receive federal funds through the Florida Department of Transportation. These funds are used for basically two items, one of which is for our very own Ross Silvers, for our mobility manager, so that helps to cover his salary. We also, as you know, have been doing a wheelchair ramp replacement, very important for the safety and security of our passengers. We're going to continue that with a $500,000 project in this coming year with those funds. So we've held our public hearing, we've had no comments, we've got our proposed program of projects. We have a deadline from FTA of June 30th to get everything in so that we have these funds available for the start of our fiscal year. So the action item before you today is to approve this program of projects. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Any questions, anyone? Anybody? Commissioner Rice, did you have any questions?
So good work.
Oh, there you go. All right, are we ready? Okay. Well then, before we vote, I'd like to ask our counsel, Alan Zimmett, to please read the title of the resolution.
Resolution 1804, resolution of Pinellas Suncoast Transit Authority authorizing the Chief Executive Officer to file an application and the submission of any other requested assurances, documents, and other information with the United States Department of Transportation for sections 5307, 5339, 5337, and 5310 grants and/or grant amendments under the Federal Transit Administration Act of 1964 as amended.
Excellent. May I have a motion, please?
Motion. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Would you please open the
Ask for
vote?
public comment.
Oh, I don't have any cards. Is there any public comment? No public comment? Then please open the voting card. Very good. Thank you very much. So this next, please pay attention. This action item is to approve of committee appointments recommended by the PSTA nominating committee. There is one nominating committee recommendation to appoint Commissioner Charlie Justice to the Planning Committee. Thank you, Commissioner Justice. I hope that meets with your approval. We do still have a vacant.
First I'm hearing of it.
Well, you know how that works.
That's why you don't come to meetings.
Yeah, there you go. With that said, we still have a, so does that mean you'll serve? Thank you very much. Very grateful. We do still have a vacancy on the Executive Committee as well as an alternate member of the Finance Committee. I would like to ask the PSTA Board if there are any volunteers to serve in either of these committee positions. If not, then we can vote on the recommendation, and I will ask Rachel to send out another survey of interest and schedule another nominating committee. Would anyone like to serve on either the nominating committee or the Finance Committee? Commissioner Tornga. You have served on PSTA for quite some time. Would you be interested in serving on the Executive Committee?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
I would move approval to add.
Yeah.
Commissioner
Caudell.
Committees.
Commissioner Caudell would be a great choice to serve on all those committees.
That would be terrific if Commissioner Caudell would show up, but she has not shown up, and she has not had any debriefings with our chair. And as you all know, those of you who've been here for a while, this is a very large board, and we work on very complex issues. So it would be really nice if the person nominated for the Executive Committee really understood where we are at this point in time. And that's all I have to say about that. Thank you, Commissioner Rice.
When you said debriefings with the chair, I know you meant with Mr. Miller.
I did mean that.
I don't want anybody to get any impression that we're violating the Sunshine Law.
I'm so
You don't
sorry.
do debriefings with other board members.
I do not have any debriefings with other board members. I'm very clear about that, and thank you for pointing that out. Brad, I meant you. You know I meant you.
I knew.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Zimmett, for making me feel very warm. So we have Commissioner Tornga, who will serve on the Executive Committee. May I have a motion, please? Oh, motion by Mr. Barkley, and do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. And so shall we vote on that before we take up the next item, Rachel? She's shaking her head no. Does that mean we can't bring a?
Public comment.
Oh, she's asking for public comment. Do we have any public comment? I apologize if I didn't state at the beginning. If you would like to make public comment on any of our items, please fill out one of our cards. There's no one that wants to, Mr. Zimmett. Can we now open the voting card, Rachel, please? All right, well.
Everybody.
That's a roll call vote. All right, we're working on it. Just give us a minute.
Mr. Bartley, was your motion for both the planning committee appointment of Commissioner Justice and
It can be, Mr.
Yes.
executive?
Yes.
Okay.
He's amending it. Correct, Mr. Barkley?
Are you
Yes,
amending
that's
it?
correct.
And
That's
then
correct.
Is the second accepting the amendment?
Richard?
Mr. Bitt?
Yes.
Are you accepting the amendment to include the appointment of Commissioner Justice to the Planning Committee?
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right?
There we go.
Okay, and that is a unanimous vote. Thank you very much, everyone. Other notice asking for, what?
Well,
We need an alternate on the
right.
Finance Committee.
Finance.
So, Finance, if you're interested in the money, and are you shaking your head that you'd like to do that, Mr. Bennett?
He's on the.
Oh, you're on the
already
Finance,
on.
okay.
When do they meet, Chairwoman, the Finance Committee?
Brad, when do
They meet monthly, the Wednesday before the board meeting, so the third Wednesday of the
Wednesday,
month.
9.
9 o'clock, right?
I could be the alternate for that if that's, anyone else wants that.
Oh,
Thank
great.
you
Thank
so
you.
much. All
Thank you
right,
very
we
much.
got it all.
Major day, there you go.
This is a major
How do
coup
we-
today.
how
Thank
do
you
we
very
modify the
much,
vote?
Counselor. I appreciate
You have
it.
to make another motion.
Yeah, I make a motion to add Commissioner Banther to be the alternate on the Finance Committee, adding to the other vote we just took.
I'll support that.
Second.
Thank you. Thank you. Excellent. Rachel, could we please open the voting card for Mr. Panda? Yes. Excellent.
Great.
Unanimous. Thank you very much. So, standing in the back, okay. Trish, please come forward and give us our performance scorecard update.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair.
Good morning.
Board. All right, well, good morning.
morning.
At your places, you have PSTA's second quarter performance scorecard. We presented this scorecard to the Finance Committee last week, and we got some very good feedback from the board about how the board should receive it and understand the scorecard. As you can see, we're doing very well. We got a score of 100 out of 100 this second quarter. And what that indicates is that we are tracking our performance very closely and that we are doing very well. The scorecard has been very successful in driving conversations within the organization to focus on our 5 key strategic objectives that were developed and approved by the board last year at the board retreat workshop at the Epicenter. You can see, actually newly mounted, we have our 5 key strategic objectives prominently displayed right here in our boardroom, making them maximally visible to our employees, to the board, and being very transparent about our commitment to members of the public that we are committed to performing in these 5 strategic key areas: community support, financial stability, customer satisfaction, employee engagement, and our commitment to performance. So these are the 5 high-level areas that you as the board very rightly are focused on when you are monitoring our performance and where you're expecting to see our continual results and progress. Out of all of the possible options, you selected and approved these 5 key strategic areas because they are the best representation of PSTA's overall performance. Just as, let's say in our automobiles, the overall performance of our car is best represented by what's on our dashboard, our fuel level, our temperature, our odometer. That is essentially, an analogy to these 5 key strategic areas for PSTA. So as you're monitoring our performance, you are asking yourself, is PSTA achieving our strategic objectives in these 5 key areas? So our scorecard has a lot of details. It's got a lot of metrics that help us track our performance in these 5 key areas. Each department, in turn, has even more metrics that they're individually tracking that then roll up and drive the performance on the organizational scorecard. So our staff operational focus is at this detailed level where all these many, many metrics are being tracked, while the board is focused on the big picture, the overall performance to these 5 key areas. And those are the ones that are displayed down the left-hand side of the performance scorecard, those 5 key buckets, which are the same as the ones here in the back. So as you look at the first one, let's take community support. As you're evaluating our performance in this key area, you're asking yourself, as a board member, how positive is the perception of PSTA in the community, and how well are we supported by our local partners? A positive score here, a good score in this area, is a high-level view that dozens of operational areas are being performed well in order to drive a positive score in that key area. As we've outlined here, we've given a little more detail. Our metrics Org 1 and Org 2 are moving along very well. Those are highlighted in green here to represent that. Our metrics for Org 3 and Org 4 are currently doing well. We are performing to our targets in that area, but we've provided some information here to show that we may anticipate some decreased performance in future quarters on those, and we're looking very carefully and giving extra attention to those metrics as we move forward. I won't go through each slide, but we have this type of detail for each of the 5 key strategic areas for you in your presentation. We also got some feedback from the Finance Committee, and we're able to respond with some additional information to describe the type of goal. So that's to say, is each one of these metrics a project-based milestone where we're achieving milestones on the way towards the ultimate culmination of that goal? Or is it, for example, a quantitative target that we are aiming towards hitting for the year? We've also shared some information on how we set the target for each goal, whether that was, for example, looking at internal historical information or looking at external industry benchmarks to set a target towards. So there is information on each of the 5 key strategic areas for you to review. Essentially, you know, this is our first year doing the scorecard, and it's been a tremendous learning experience, and we are continually applying this learning as we move forward. As we set our fiscal year 19 goals later in the summer, we will be applying what we've learned. We will be refining these targets. We will be looking more closely at the way we are structuring the goals, including what targets we set. For example, we're currently researching more external industry standard benchmarks that we can use as our targets. In summary, this is still a work in progress, as you would expect for the first year of an organization-wide initiative. But the bottom line is that this is a very positive instrument in PSTA, and it is changing our organization for the better. It's driving detailed, collaborative, strategic discussions and actions within our organization to move the needle forward on our performance. And I am confident to say that we are doing well, and our scores so far this year on the scorecard do reflect that. We're making great progress as an agency and performing well to our 5 key strategic goals, and we anticipate that this will be an invaluable tool for us as we move forward and make it even better. So thank you. I'm happy to take any questions that you have.
Thank you very much for that very comprehensive report. I have to ask, is the rising cost of gas making a difference in our ridership? It's probably too soon to tell, but I think we ought to keep our eyes on that.
Something that we are monitoring very closely. It's got the positive effect of likely increasing ridership somewhat, but also a challenging effect to our budget for the buses, for all of our buses still that use fuel.
Well, the electric ones will come in handy.
Exactly. Once those arrive, we'll have 2 that we'll be able to not worry about.
And what's the arrival date?
Hopefully in next week or 2 weeks, yeah.
Well, board members, we all need to take a ride on it for sure. Yeah, very good. Thank you very much. Any further thoughts? Well, Commissioner Rice?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you. This is a great report, and just overall, in about the 6 years I've been on PSTA, this is something in particular that I've seen us really ramp up and just do so well. There's a saying that if you don't measure it, you're not managing it. And this is, I've just been so impressed with the steps forward we've made with Leadership PSTA and the development of this performance scorecard. It's obvious from here how important it is as a tool for you, for your job as managers, but it's also a great transparent tool for board members to make sure that we're using accurate data and that we're covering all the bases to make sure that we're really heading PSTA in the direction of where we're setting our goals. It's really helpful. The numbers are impressive. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Rice. Anyone else? Commissioner Tornga.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with Councilmember Rice's comments. And would you just, for the sake of everyone, including anyone that may be watching this, I'll just pick the very first one. That's the easy one. It says number of funding partnerships. It said a Q2 goal of 4. And so it said goal points would be 5. In Q2, we have 5.5. In Q1, we had 5.5. Can you just explain that? And then I'm very pleased. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So the scorecard is structured so that there's an opportunity for up to 10% bonus points for each metric to really reward and highlight above target achievement. So in these first 2 quarters, we have exceeded our goal.
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Eggers.
Yeah, just a couple things. First, I do also agree with the comments. I think this is a great tool to move forward and to use at whatever level. More conversation at our level and at each of the managers as it goes down. So great work. And I think we just need to keep exploring those benchmarks. And also just wanted to extend a congratulations to you for your recent promotion. So
Thank you very much.
Good to have you part of that leadership team.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Commissioner. Anyone else? Commissioner Bennett.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Is this a performance scorecard that we're going to use in the future?
Yes, sir.
And if you rate our organization performance at 99% today, how are you going to improve in the future?
Good question.
So one of the important things that we're going to do is assess our performance this year and use it to set our targets and our metrics for next year.
And who puts down the performance goals? Who establishes those?
Our executive team does.
So you think that 79% customer approval rate is a good goal? When I think that number should be 100.
Well, thank you. We will take that into our discussions. We definitely want to set a goal that is reflective of the community's expectations.
79% is almost failing. So I don't think that's a good goal. I'm not nearly as optimistic about the scorecard as my fellow board members are. To me, I think you've put it in too favorable of a position. If you rated us at 70% this year and next year 85, that would be a nice improvement. But I don't know what you're going to do next year. You're going to fail. You can't beat 99%. That's all I have, Madam Chairman.
Good points, Mr. Bennett. I
Thank
do
you.
think we need to be conscious of the fact that this is a fairly new initiative, am I correct? And we've worked really hard to get to this point where previously when I came on the board, I think Commissioner Rice spoke to it, we had very little assessment capability, and we've worked really hard to make sure that we're learning. And so your comments are well-intended, and we'll take them into consideration for the next time.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And Mr. Scott, you have no input? You usually are all over this. There you go. I knew you had something to say.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome.
I do think that this is a very good, as Commissioner Egger said, I believe this is a very good way for us to evaluate the performance of the organization. I do, however, kind of as Commissioner Bennett stated, if we continually rate ourselves right at, you know, this is, I believe, the second one that we've seen, scorecard we've seen, and we're like right at the top of the list. So I kind of do question the relevance of it a little bit, is that if we're always rating ourselves that high, you know, how do we take those next steps? I mean, it's good to measure it all, but you know.
So to your point, and that's a very good point, Trish, maybe you could take a look at, if you haven't already. I know it's the leadership team that determines the goals, but perhaps it might be worthwhile to think about diversifying where you get your input from. Because if you're assessing your own organization, the propensity could be there to just give yourself an A+ on everything. Sure. But I'm not sure that's totally realistic, and maybe you might want to include Commissioner Bennett, for example, or Mr. Scott, to just give you some additional things to think about that maybe you're not thinking about today. It's just a thought. I'm not saying do it for sure, but, you know, just might want to have a discussion about it with Brad, of course. Commissioner Rice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I mean, let's not forget the value of transparency. And your comments, commissioners, are well received, and it's a good point. But you wouldn't even be able to have that comment were it not for being able to look at this. So this puts everything out there, and the transparency is a powerful tool, because the more eyeballs on this is the more that we can help lead the organization. So ironically, your comments in themselves are constructive, but this made it possible for you to offer that criticism.
Very good point. Excellent.
Thank you.
Excellent, as usual. Commissioner Eggers.
Well, I think Commissioner, go ahead. I was going to let Commissioner Banter.
Commissioner Banter,
Yeah.
I'm
Yes,
sorry.
thank you. And Bill, and thank you, Ms. Collins, and again, good job on your advancement.
Thank you.
I'm obviously very new.
Would you please hit your, okay, you got it.
I'm sorry, that was a
You
hit.
got it.
I got it, okay.
Thank you.
I'm obviously new to this board, but the company that my family owns, we do this kind of stuff for like private companies. So I am familiar with it, and I think it's a great starting point. I kind of combine the feelings of Commissioner Rice and Commissioner Bennett in the sense that Commissioner Rice is correct that without this piece of paper, we have nothing, and it doesn't matter what we rate ourselves, or if we're overrated or if we're underrated. But I also share these sentiments of Commissioner Bennett to a certain extent that, you know, I think we need to be careful. You know, while I think we're not low, I don't think we're 97, but I think this is a great starting point, and I think where possible improvement could be made. This is improvement every year. It's not a criticism of the scoreboard. Is I think what Chairman Long mentioned was maybe who's involved in this process of the evaluation. And also, each year, obviously, you're going to tighten up the metrics. You know, not use the same benchmark like every single year. So I think a combination of that could yield a more realistic approach. And I know 79%, as Commissioner Bennett mentioned, is low, but this is public transit, not, you know, Target. Okay, I mean, it's not going to be that high. It's just not. So I think, you know, if was 79 the goal, or was that what was achieved?
79% actually was based on historical data from
Okay.
the most recent customer service survey that we conducted on our routes,
Okay.
where we vastly overperformed the industry standard for customer service.
Very good. Okay, well, I think, you know, I think that this is a wonderful start. I think we can take some of the constructiveness and use that to tighten it up for next year. But I think Commissioner Rice hit the nail on the head when she said that you know, this is the first time that this is the starting point, and without this scoreboard, we'd have no way of knowing. So I appreciate your work. I won't be on the board next year when it comes back, but I'm sure it'll be better. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry?
Why won't you be on the board?
I have term limits in Tarpon Springs, so I do, I know. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm not like resigning or anything. No, I have term limits. So I'm termed out next year in March. So this is a brief stay you all have with me, so.
Well, it's been remarkable and very well received, so that's
Hopefully it
too bad.
continues. You still got 10 months of me, so don't get too excited.
Just when you get to know what's really going on.
I know.
Commissioner Eggers.
Yeah, the only thing, again, we can continue to try to refine this, and we've done some really good benchmarking work with the national organization that we're part of, and I think to that end, we might have some of that put in here too, so that we really, we're up on some of those areas, we're pretty high, and some of those areas we're not so high. We do well overall, but I think it would be nice to, when we look at different pieces of this, to incorporate some of that work, and that always gets nice perspective. We can't get too big for our britches, or too down on ourselves. We can look to others and can make those comparisons. So anyway, just a comment.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Eggers. Commissioner Scott?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Did you put your mic on?
Oh, I thought I did, maybe not.
There, oh.
Is that
There
it?
you go.
Okay. Commissioner Rice is absolutely correct in what she said. I just want to make the point that I'm not suggesting that the agency is failing. We're doing well in a number of these areas. I'm just not quite sure we're 99. That's all I'm saying. So just wanted to make that point.
Thank you for the clarification. Anybody else? Okay. Your mic is still on. There you go. All right, my fault. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for those thoughtful comments. And if we could now have Cindy, where are you? There you are, with our transit campaign results.
Good morning, board members.
Good morning.
I'm Cindy Raskin-Schmidt, your Director of Communications and Marketing, and I'm here today to give you an update on our Modern Transit campaign. If you will recall, in the recent years, you all approved for us to move forward with a campaign targeting non-riders in the Pinellas County area with the purpose of increasing awareness about PSTA's innovative products and services. So this little cone might look familiar from previous presentations where we talked about who we were going to target and why. So we're looking at that awareness piece at the top of the cone here to try to increase awareness about PSTA among non-riders. So we did this in a number of ways. We partnered, first and foremost, Elisa DiBernardo from FKQ, our ad agency, is here, and they helped us along this path with implementing this campaign. It had several factors. We had a television commercial, which played on local cable stations, digital ads, both in-app ads, various apps that people use around our area, and also social media. And then we also have 2 beautiful bus wraps driving around Pinellas County to further share that message. Here are some visual examples of some of those items. On the bottom, of course, you see the bus, which is out and about. I see it every morning when I come in out at the lay-by, and it's just very satisfying to see that each day. On the top right there are some examples of the digital in-app ads. And then on the top left, you can see the Facebook post that links to the video of the commercial, which I'd like to play for you just to remind you of what that looked like.
When is a bus more than just a bus? When it's an innovator, a trailblazer, a wireless hotspot, and a simplifier. PSTA drives Pinellas and its economic engine with innovative partnerships, programs, and services that are setting the bar nationwide. Take a new look at public transit in Pinellas. Explore modern transit at psta.net.
I love those colors.
Yes, that is artwork from a local artist named Ricky Watts. He has a mural in downtown St. Petersburg, just off of Central. It's First and I don't remember the intersection, I'm sorry, but it's a whole wall on the side of the building. And we were very excited, and he was excited to partner with us to get to see his artwork driving around town on a bus. So that was the message, and of course, it's all about innovation. It's exciting. We have employees who are actors at the beginning. You might recognize Rosalind, who's at the front desk, and some people from our finance department. So that was pretty exciting. So I wanted to share with you the impressions. Our target was to reach 18 million people. An impression means that somebody saw it. They saw it on Facebook, they saw the TV commercial, they saw the bus drive by. So that target in a 3-month period, January, February, and March this year, was to reach 18 million impressions. We did way better than that. We almost hit 20 million impressions. And it's broken down here. You can see through cable, digital, social, and of course the bus is a great one because it's rolling all over our community and people see it. We reached 99% of the people in the 25 to 54 age range, which was our overall fabulous reach for this particular market. In addition to this impression, we did some surveying. Before the commercial ran, we had a subcontractor through FKQ that did some surveys for us. They asked 7 questions about perceptions of PSTA, so we could gauge those perceptions before the commercial ran. Then we asked those same survey questions after the commercial had run to see if we had moved the needle at all. The scores that you're going to see in a second here are arranged. 5 is strongly agree, 3 is kind of neutral to agreeing, and anything up above 4 is full agreement, 3.6 to 3.99 are trending towards an agreement score. So between the first wave before the commercial ran and the second wave after the commercial ran, you can see that we had some lift on several items. These are mostly technology related, innovative related items, which is exactly what we were promoting in the commercial. So it was really nice to see these increases. Any kind of shift in audience perception is in our favor because that was the exact goal of this campaign. Now, really interestingly, what the surveyors did for the Wave 2 folks, after they asked them those same questions, they showed them the TV commercial and then asked the questions again to see how they felt about PSTA after they had viewed our commercial. So this slide shows you like solid green, lots of really great jumps. Now, what this tells us is that the message in the commercial is effective. It's a great message. We believe that we could benefit in the future if we wanted to by using this commercial, continuing to share this message. It makes sense. People understand it. They enjoy it. And it will continue to move the perception needle in a positive direction if we choose to go in that way. So that is the end of my presentation. I would be happy to entertain questions.
Commissioner Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much, Cindy. That's a great presentation. Tell you what, that bus, I've seen it rolling around. You can't miss it. I mean,
yeah,
it
it's
really
fabulous.
It really jumps out. Just curious on the impressions on the social media ones there. Do we geographically know where they came from? Were they in this region? Were they outside this region?
We specifically targeted residents in Pinellas County.
Okay, so it was all in Pinellas County then. Okay, great. That was my question. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Commissioner Justice and then Commissioner Eggers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This was social media plus cable TV. Is that what was our
Yes.
saturation on cable? How much did we spend on cable?
The dollar amount that we spent was, I think I have that in here.
Please wait until you
come
come
up to
to
here so
the
they can-
dais
they
and
can
state
hear
your name and your
Hi,
address.
Elisa DiBernardo with FKQ. It was a flighted TV campaign that we did geo-target specifically only to run in Pinellas County, since that was our target, which is also why the digital media was selected, because it's very much easier to geolocate people digitally. We did use cable because that is where you can use an interconnect to only target Pinellas County versus a broadcast channel, which would go across the entire DMA. TV tends to be the most expensive medium. It also allows you to communicate the lengthiest message. So When we look at impressions, of course, they aren't all created equal. A bus is going to have a much shorter message than the 30-second spot, which is why you would spend, as much budget there as you can, and then reinforce that with the other channels. So the social media also presented the TV spot, as well as the rich media, which is why those channels were also chosen to get as much exposure for the full 30-second message as we could.
So do we have a dollar amount on what we spent? You said a third was on TV, but
I want to say it was 120, 125, somewhere around there. I'd be happy to get you the exact number. I don't want to misstate it.
but that's a ballpark, 125,000.
Around there.
It was, it was a little less than that, because I think that was the total media budget. I want to say it was probably 60 in that area, but we can follow up with an exact number.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that. And then the people that, where you have on slide 7, these were the same people from wave 1 to wave 2, just before and after watching the commercial?
No, it was a random sample that fit the qualifications to take the survey, primarily that they were within the demographic that we had assigned, as well as living within Pinellas County, but it was a different group each time.
But it was the same demographics from group 1 to group 2? Mm-hmm. But it's interesting that they would decrease on some of the items, the especially the free Wi-Fi. I mean, some of the others weren't highlighted, so maybe that makes some sense. And we're not talking giant jumps, but those drops were interesting. But yeah, if you could get the exact dollar, that'd be helpful.
Yes.
Commissioner Scott, and then Commissioner Eggers. I'm sorry, I got it.
I already asked my light's still on.
Commissioner Eggers.
So the advertising program that we went through, the promotion program, was to target our non-riders, which to me kind of translates in a way to people that might be candidates for premium transit down the road. So again, I think just as a word of caution, I think this is great stuff, completely great stuff, but just on, as we start to look at implementing some premium transit services, I hope we do that with the thought of targeting those needs, like the airport service, and then we have a commuter service to Tampa, and that we don't get too confused and then too diluted, and then not have the product that people are excited about through what we're doing, and then we experience it and not get the experience that we're looking for. So I keep saying that over and over, but I think we have to be very careful. And then just on a side note, I am really glad to hear that you're using local artists. I think anytime there's public funding, it should go from the inside out. We should look for local artists in Pinellas County, and then in the region, and then in the state before you go out. So I think it's great, and I really like the program that you put together. Very catchy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Bennett.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd like for you to look at page 7 again and tell me better what that number means. What's 3.4 mean?
So 3.4 would be an aggregated score based on folks who answered between 1 and 5 as the scoring, if you want to go up a couple slides.
So 5 is a perfect score.
5 is a perfect score. We believe any scores in that 3.5 or up is a positive. Anything above 4 is in agreement. So all of the scores are, to our PSTA's credit, are quite high. It does communicate that the general sentiment around PSTA in the community for non-riders is quite strong. There were no 1s or 2s, there was no negative kind of reactions to.
So I know we spent somewhere in the neighborhood of $100,000, which is kind of insignificant if you look at the big picture. But even though it is insignificant, what are we going to do about the results? Is there a plan now put together to make these results better in the future? Tell me, for example, provides Wi-Fi service on the buses. What are we going to do about that?
Well, this gives us the opportunity to find the areas where we can do a better job of telling the public that we have these services available. Remembering,
do we have Wi-Fi services on every bus?
We do.
We do. Then why would they not rate that a 5?
Well, it's an awareness. It's an awareness of that. So these are non-riders, people who know what PSTA is, know that there's bus service and it's called PSTA, but they don't necessarily have experience with it or use it. So that's why this commercial was created, was to increase awareness and increase the positive perception of PSTA in the community.
Well, see, now I'm thinking that we're not doing a good job. We have Wi-Fi on every bus, so we didn't get a 5. Why about offering student discount programs? Don't we do that?
We do.
Why do we get a 4 on that and not a 5?
Hold on, Commissioner Commissioner Bennett, let's let Brad see if he can
Commissioner
weigh in.
Bennett, again, this was a survey of 100 people that specifically don't ride the bus, but they're from Pinellas County. And if you were, I know you do ride the bus, so it wouldn't be you, but the question would be asked of you, do you agree that PSTA provides Wi-Fi on its buses? On a scale of 1 to 5. You'd say a 5 if you strongly agree with that you know 100% of the PSTA provides Wi-Fi on the buses, and you'd give a 1 if you strongly disagree. You know the PSTA doesn't, and you don't ride. So on average, PSTA, they said, 3.6, which is right in the middle, which is really they don't know. They don't know. And that's the result. That's what we found out from this survey is they don't know that we haven't done a good job of advertising that we have Wi-Fi on the bus. That's why then we showed another 100 people, or whatever the number of the people that saw it, we showed them the commercial. And then you look at that chart and the number of people that said we had Wi-Fi, because the commercial said we have Wi-Fi, so they listened, and the number jumped up to 4.6. I mean, almost everybody said, oh, PSTA has Wi-Fi. So you're right in that not all million people that live in Pinellas County are aware that we have Wi-Fi on the bus. More people, the people that saw the commercial, there's a good sense that they do. That's why we ran the TV commercial. Make awareness.
All right. All right, so I have a question, and it's just a thought that comes into my mind. Since we are getting ready to launch our new service from Pinellas County to Tampa International, do we need to do something like this to highlight that service, since we haven't been doing that, and I doubt there's very many of the general public that really know that we're going to be doing that?
We have a marketing plan put together. We are making specific effort to reach out to people in the area at 3 different groups. Travelers, so people can park their car at the Ulmerton Park and Ride and use that service. So we're specifically looking for advertising opportunities to reach those people, some partnerships with Visit St. Pete Clearwater and some other things. We're also going to be talking to people that already work at the airport that could use the service to get there, and our current riders who can use the service to get to the airport to travel. So we do have plans to reach out to all of those 3 groups of people, spending a lot of time on the people that don't already know about the service.
Excellent, thank you. Any other questions, members? No?
Just a comment,
Yes.
Madam Chairman.
Yes.
Speaking of the bus to the airport, I think a great promotion would be save $25, ride the bus, door to door.
Excellent, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, our next, Cassandra, I'm sorry, you just walked out. Are you ready? Okay. Please come forward and share with us our funding for transit investments. Thank you, Cindy.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. Child emergency, allergies, you know. Ate the wrong thing at school. So, good morning.
Good morning.
Always a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much. In front of you, you have 2 sheets that describe our projects that PSTA is looking to advance. These projects have been part of our vision plan, part of our community bus plan in 2013, and will continue to be explored through the plans and projects that we have coming up with the update of the community bus plan, as well as our partnership with the long-range transportation plan. I'd like to direct your attention to the sheet called Tourism-Focused Transit Projects. Because of the change in the legislation for the tourist development tax and the availability of the opportunity for it to be used for transit that is related to tourist services, we've created a sub-list of our services that could fall under that tourism moniker. So those 4 projects that we think are worth exploring in this conversation are the Jolly Trolley Coastal Route, taking it from a current 60-minute service to a 30-minute service, creating a new TIA Express to Clearwater Beach, extending and improving our 300X, which, as Chair Long mentioned, will go to the airport in June, but we'd like to also expand that service and make it better, as well as have it connect to the beach. In addition to that, the pilot project or the catalyst project out of the Regional Transit Feasibility Plan could also have a nexus to tourism with its connection from downtown St. Petersburg to downtown Tampa. So these 4 projects we've been asked to take a look at in terms of the capital costs and the operating, and be prepared to present this through the Forward Pinellas presentation to the Tourist Development Council in June. So we're bringing this to you as an information item, so you know that this will come before the Tourist Development Council in just a couple weeks. The other sheet is for a broader conversation about our system plan of our rapid bus lines and our other BRT routes beyond the Central Avenue BRT. So we do have the Central Avenue BRT on there as our part of our core system, but we have other routes that we would like to do next as well. So these are also an opportunity for us to have a conversation about those candidate projects. This sheet in particular will be explored more fully in the development, as I mentioned, of the community bus plan and the long-range transportation plan. So with that, I would be happy to take any questions.
Questions, commissioners? Commissioner Rice?
When is the TDC June meeting?
June 20th.
Is it the 20th, which is the same day as our committee meetings? Is that correct? 20th? Yes.
Commissioner Scott?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much, Cassandra. Just curious, on the front page here, there's the Clearwater Beach TIA Express and the Mid-County Beach TIA. Is that envisioned as and or?
So I think for the conversation with the Tourist Development Council, these are candidate projects that they could discuss. I don't think there's any intention that they would pick all of them, but that they maybe start with one.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? So just a little background. I don't think Cassandra mentioned it, but you know, this is the first time a transit group has ever come to the TDC to request their consideration of funding. And part of that is because the statute did not allow bed tax dollars to be used for transit solutions. And deep discussions with members of the legislature and other folks that work in the transit industry, when you stop to think that 18 million people came into Pinellas County this last year, and the projections are that 34 million will come in the next 5 years, clearly you can articulate that there is a nexus between providing infrastructure improvements for public transportation to solve some of our tourism folks that are moving around. And if any of you have ever been out to Clearwater Beach on the bus or the trolley, you quickly learn that most of the folks on Clearwater Beach are using public transportation to go from point A to point B. And so it seems to me almost irresponsible that we don't begin a conversation with the TDC to talk about using a little itty-bitty piece of that bed tax money to support transportation infrastructure. It doesn't take much to be able to bond out significant amounts of money for a big project. And so that's kind of the ultimate goal, but you got to start somewhere, and that's with a conversation. Commissioner Justice.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I think you phrased it well. It's the beginning of a conversation, and I would just temper the expectation levels that this is very early in the process. The BCC has not had a first presentation on the new eligibility from a legal standpoint, from what's eligible to be funded. The TDC hasn't had that first, which they'll have in June. So, again, just to kind of make sure that we know the frame of reference that we're in. Thank you.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better myself. We discussed it at our executive committee some time ago. Commissioner Gerard, who isn't here today, was very focused on the fact that she wanted the discussion to start at the Board of County Commissioners level first. However, I'm not the chair this year, so there you go. Commissioner Eggers.
I think Commissioner Justice said everything that I was thinking.
Great minds.
On that point, I did, again, there are going to be an awful lot of discussion going on about what to do with those dollars, from public safety to roads to sewers to transit. And I agree with the tempering. I think every group that has interest, every advocacy group, and that includes PSTA looking for funding, will get their ducks in a row probably ahead of that discussion. And so we'll just have to be careful as we move forward, because at some point we want to, I think, incrementally step into this carefully so that we don't overextend and then have to pull back. That's the last thing we want to do. We want to gradually get into this, and so that we can be long-standing and be dependable and be, that kind of thing. So I think this is good. It's a great tool to use for conversation. I think it kind of puts some perspective on what we're looking for in any one of these projects. But again, caution.
Thank you very much for all your comments. Anyone else? No? Thank you, Cassandra. Good job. And now, Brad, would you please give us a report on whatever it is you'd like to talk about?
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll try to cover the reports and correspondence, item number 9, and the future meeting subjects number 10. In your packet are our performance reports, and as you can see, which is the consistent trend, we have been seeing a reduction, although the reduction is getting smaller, in our fixed route ridership. But fortunately and unfortunately, we are seeing record ridership, the highest ever on our DART paratransit service. People with disabilities that cannot ride the regular bus have the opportunity to take our DART service, contracted out through CareRide, which is a very low cost compared to our peers across the industry. We are one of the lowest cost, most efficient systems, but that we have record ridership and very high ridership compared to our peers, and that is putting a crimp into our budget, because we pay every time someone rides CareRide, they ride as one person. It's basically door-to-door service in a accessible vehicle, and so that costs PSTA some $30-some a trip. So it's great to see ridership. It's probably due, I think, likely due to the improved economy, that more and more folks need to get out and about, and that's driving that up. I know in talking to my colleague over at Hart that they're seeing increases, not as much as we are, but they are seeing increases too. That makes me move to future meeting subjects next month, and then, as you know, in the summertime, much of the discussion at the board meetings is about our budget, and we are hard at work putting together our budget plans for next fiscal year 2019. And as Chairman Long mentioned earlier, There are two things the PSTA is looking at in our budget. I'll just give you a little teaser. Two challenges we're dealing with. Number one is fuel prices going up, and number two is DART. It's probably reverse. Number one is DART, number two is fuel, as far as significant budget challenge that we're trying to come up with ways in which we might mitigate. I also just want to highlight, as many folks have said, things are very busy around here, and I know that your calendars are very, very busy. You have a lot of these on your calendar, but I just want to mention a few things. If you are interested in attending any of these events that are happening, just let me or Rachel or somebody know, and we can give you the details. A week from Friday, as was mentioned, there is this meeting of the MPOs at the Epicenter, which I think maybe I now learn conflicts with Commissioner Maroney's funeral. But that is the study. That is an update on the study that is going on about the potential of merging or consolidating in some way the three MPOs of Pinellas, Pasco, and Hillsborough, and that's an update meeting next Friday. The following Friday is the T-BARTA board meeting, which, again, these fun topics of the Regional Transit Feasibility Plan I'm sure will come up on Friday, June 8th. And then the next Friday, every Friday there's something fun. Then the next Friday is the joint PSTA HART Executive Committee meeting, where we get together with our friends over from Hillsborough, and the meeting is going to be held here at PSTA, I think in the afternoon. The entire board, I think, has gotten a notice on that, or will get a notice on that, and then the executive committees of both PSTA and HART are the specific folks that are asked to attend. One of a little component of our marketing campaign for the airport service is then on Monday. Friday, we've got the Great Heart meeting, and then we've got on Monday at 6 o'clock in the morning, you're welcome to join me at the Ulmerton Park and Ride lot to give coffee and donuts to the first, hopefully, millions of tourists that'll be immediately taking the bus to the airport for the first time. I doubt it. We're not going to buy that many donuts. But it's really also to thank our existing riders for riding with us. I'll be there to feed them. That same week is this, as I think appropriately discussed, first discussions ever with the Tourist Development Council about possible transportation funding, because now that's permissible. But it is just a first discussion, and Chairman Welch, who is chaired, has scheduled some time for thank you to Whit Blanton and I for going and just having a discussion. I think they will, Commissioner Justice, also have a discussion of the legal requirements of the use of those funds. That Saturday, you're welcome to join me in downtown St. Pete for St. Pete Pride. We will have a park and ride lot service like we did last year, where it's very popular for people to take it down to the parade, and then a bus in the parade at St. Pete Pride on Saturday, June 23rd. And then on Monday, June 25th, we're having a official ribbon cutting of our Airport Express, which I'm hoping some of you might join me.
What? When is that?
With Superman Fanfare music by Joe Barkley.
When is that last?
June 25th, Monday, June 25th, at Tampa International Airport. Joe Lupano and I will be there, hopefully. I believe that Commissioner Long will be there as well.
What time is that?
3 o'clock? 2 o'clock. 2:30. So, and then I'll see you right back here on June 27th, 2 days later, for our next meeting. So, lots going on.
Madam Chair.
Yes. Commissioner Eggers.
You were talking a little bit about it at the beginning of the meeting, and then you just referenced next Friday's meeting. And is this more of an update on where we are in that process, or is this an actual meeting to move forward? And I know Whit's here, I think if this is that critical of a meeting to discuss whether the merging of MPOs is, I think it's something that we ought to think about. I mean, with all deference to the other groups, that we ought to think about canceling this meeting. I mean, there's a lot of people that will not be there that are really talking about the future of our MPO. So I don't know if Whit has any thoughts on the significance of that meeting and whether we should.
Mr. Blanton, please come forward and state your name and address for the record.
Good morning. It's Whit Blanton, Executive Director of Forward Pinellas. Thank you for the opportunity. This June 1st meeting is an important milestone in the evaluation of best practices research that the consultant team is bringing back to us from about 10 different regions around the country, and what are their methods of coordinating, and it's a very extensive report. It's very thorough. I've read it. I'm impressed by it. I think they've done a great job, and I think there's a lot of good lessons learned. We're not going to be having any recommendations developed for this analysis until the end of the year. And there will be an opportunity, I believe we're planning for a third workshop, or we're anticipating a third workshop to go over those recommendations. In addition to that, what we're thinking as staff is that we would have a Forward Pinellas workshop in January to discuss the findings and recommendations internally. At this point, it's I think it presents a real challenge to cancel this meeting and try to reschedule it. But it is unfortunate. I won't be there. My daughter's getting married the next day, and it's unfortunate that many of you will not be able to attend, and so Pinellas County would not have very much representation at all, except maybe at a staff level. And I think the elected officials are going to be really influential to this, because when it comes down to a recommendation of how any MPO governance structure changes, it's a decision that's going to be the elected officials of that MPO and the governor. And there's really nobody else involved in that conversation. So it's important the elected officials are engaged and involved. So I think if you wanted to make a recommendation about canceling the meeting, you can certainly do that, and we can consider that. But we'll have to consider that with Hillsborough, with Pasco, with T-BARTA officials, and make the best decision we can. Fortunately, it's not the final step where we've got recommendations on the table. I would absolutely say we need to cancel it at that point.
In response to something that you just said, I clearly heard you say it will be the elected officials who will be making the recommendations going forward on this regional approach. And that causes me much consternation, considering the fact that our very own TMA, I just found this out at our last meeting, does not allow all of the elected officials to have a vote in any recommendation moving forward. And I personally find that very problematic, especially if there's a circumstance where the designated vote person and that alternate are not there. It seems a little misguided to me. I just wanted to say that for the record. I know you already know it, but I'm going to be saying it a lot.
Yeah, and if I may just clarify, the TMA leadership group develops recommendations by consensus that are sent back to the individual MPOs who then vote. So that's kind of how that organization operates. But we certainly can entertain some options for that as well.
Just because that's the way you've done it doesn't mean that it's right. And I think that organization has certainly morphed and grown over the years in its influence and in the way it approaches agendas. So I won't belabor it here, but Commissioner Eggers, please go ahead.
To that point, I think that's a conversation that group can have to alter the vote, the folks that can weigh in on sure. direction. And I think that's something that we can talk about for sure. I mean, I have no problem with that. This is not a decision-making group. It's kind of a recommendation to go back to your boards to make those decisions. So but I'm going back to this meeting next week, and I was hearing you say the way you were going in that conversation that, okay, I guess it's just going to be kind of an update. It's just going to be, but then as you kept talking, it just felt like there could be conversations that go on. I mean, I've been a part of these these regional group meetings already now, where certain kind of agendas start to bubble up. And I don't want it bubbling anywhere without us being at the table. So I am, you know, again, if it's just an update on an extensive review of what's out there so that we can kind of consider it in the future, in a future meeting, I guess that's one thing. You can't control what happens once the meeting gets going. And I just think that, you know, obviously we need to be at the table, and we would be had it not been for our friend passing. And so I don't think we should be having that meeting. That's just my thought. Thank you.
And I'll clarify that we wouldn't have a workshop for just an update. We could do that in 15 or 20 minutes.
Yeah.
But this is really to take the best practices case study research and really dive into it, and then see what works and how that fits and how that applies to our region. And it's a start of a conversation that will lead to those recommendations. So I think your point's well taken.
So in the absence of the elected officials at this meeting, would it be possible for you to send that information to us so that we at least have an opportunity to digest it and read it, and we're not coming in cold
Absolutely.
at the next meeting?
Absolutely. The draft final report is on the TBARTA website, so it's available publicly. We can send that link to everybody. And we'll take this discussion back at a staff level and decide whether we should postpone or reschedule this meeting.
Yeah. Just
Thank you.
One more comment.
Yes, Commissioner.
And if the tendency is to move it forward, I would just respectfully ask that whoever's facilitating the meeting or whatever, that they respect those restraining those kind of conversations that perhaps move us down a path that, you know, we're at the fork in the road, we're getting information.
Right.
If we're going to have those kind of discussions, that they would respectfully ask that those be, you know, tabled.
Sure. And if I may, let me ask a question of those of you who might be considering attending or would have otherwise. We have the potential of restructuring the agenda to maybe move the more important conversation to 2 to 4 in the afternoon. But my sense is that's going to be real hard for folks to switch gears and get their head engaged on something like that. So I'm not seeing a lot of support for restructuring the meeting to allow people to go after
We're not,
services.
we have already commitments that take us through the end of the day.
Sure.
It's just
With the same thing that we've been
Yes.
talking about. So
Okay.
it goes beyond the morning into the afternoon.
Gotcha. Okay, understood. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, thank you, Brad, for that fabulous discussion. And now we're going to move to board comments from everyone. Commissioner Banter.
Oh, yes. Is this green?
Sorry.
Is it red or green? Do I talk?
You're good.
We're trying to get these in tarpons, so I'm trying to learn them too. Can I get this in like a PDF form? Is that fine? Is that possible to be emailed to me?
Yeah.
It's on the website. I just don't do well with like big books, so I like stuff on my iPad.
You've got a long way to go to Tarpon.
So I know we do. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Tornga.
I thought we had a great presentation today.
Please turn on your mic.
Thank you. Think we had a great presentation and a great conversation today. I really appreciate the forward thinking about how we may go forward with the TDC, but understanding some of the concerns that were given by particularly the county commissioners. But I think it's important that we go forward with that. And I thought it was not overly aggressive, but nicely aggressive. So thank you very much for that. Thank you.
Commissioner Justice.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The only thing I had was Mr. Miller went through a litany of exciting sounding upcoming events. If we could get an email with those lists, because I wasn't able to jot them all down.
Right, I know.
That'd be great. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Fanther.
Thank you. I just enjoyed hearing our modern transit campaign PowerPoint presentation again. We heard it at the planning meeting, and I enjoyed seeing it again, as I enjoyed seeing it on TV and through our social media personally as well. I know some others who did and had told me about it, and I think it was very successful. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for the comments. Commissioner Rice.
This was a great meeting. I just agree with all comments that have been made. And furthermore, I'd like to add a big thank you and congratulations to Stephanie for her 34 years of service and employment to PSTA, and a congratulations to Trish on her well-deserved promotion. I think our staff are really rock stars, so thank you.
They are rock stars.
They are.
Excellent. Commissioner
You
Bennett.
too, Brad.
Commissioner Bennett. Commissioner, there you go.
Yeah, I don't have any real further comments. I just think that I've been here almost a year now, and I've never heard areas presented to us that are not doing well. And I cannot believe that all the areas in this bus transportation system are at 99%. There's got to be some areas that we're failing. And the audience, the presenters, shouldn't be afraid to tell us that, because we want to know, and we can help correct it.
So if I could respond to that, Commissioner
Certainly.
Bennett, you do have your debriefings with Brad before our board meetings?
Yes.
Okay. Perhaps you could share with him, if you haven't already, what those specific areas you think might be, because we work really, really
Well,
hard.
I don't think that's my responsibility. That's the
Well-
responsibility of our directors sitting out here.
And
Come
you-
tell
and-
us.
and
Come
that's-
tell us where you need help.
And that's true, and we work hard at each meeting to focus on areas that need improvement. So maybe we need to do a better job of talking about where we were, where we are now, and where we want to be.
Oh, I
And
agree.
maybe that would help define for you some of the things that, because you haven't been here a long time, you're maybe not aware of how far we've come from where we were a few years ago. So just keep that in mind, and we'll continue trying to work hard to adjust our thought process to cover those points.
Thank
Okay?
you. Yes,
You're
sir.
welcome. Commissioner Lisa Wheeler-Brown. Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair, and thank you. Thank you for a great meeting and clarifying some stuff as I was sitting here listening. I would also like to thank Bill Johnson, but I think he's gone.
He left.
For coming and advocating to make sure that we incorporate the pedestrian crossing improvements as we're doing construction down there. And Cassandra, thank you for coming to St. Pete City Council and making your presentation. It was well presented. And I look forward to seeing everybody on June 23rd at Pride. And I hope you all have a great Memorial Day weekend.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Thank you. Commissioner Eggers? Please
yeah.
put your mic, please.
Thank you. It's not on when it's supposed to be on, and it's on when it's not supposed to
I'm
be on.
working on that.
Keep
I'm
you-
trying to
thank
work
you.
on that.
Thank you for your
Please
help.
forgive me.
Thank you for your help. No, I'll get there. First of all, I just wanted to thank Whit for being here, Ray, for Giovanni for being here as well. It's good to have folks that are all part of this kind of regional conversation to be in the room. And Ray, I know you're here all the time, so really thank you. And Whit, thanks for being here today. I did get a text from my assistant saying that Michael Case with T-Barta said they would look to reschedule or restructure the meeting.
Which
So
meeting?
I'm assuming we're talking about the June 1st meeting, because so that's in process. It doesn't mean it's happened or anything else, but they're talking about it, so that's good. And I really just appreciate the presentations we had today. And all of them, I think they're all positive. I think they're all good. There's an awful lot of constructively critical conversation that still needs to happen in time. And I think as long as we all take it with the spirit that it's meant, and that is to continue moving this organization forward in a positive way and getting more riders, okay? And that's the key to me. It's not 1.5% of Pinellas County that needs to be on these buses. We've got to get that number, that needle moving, and that ultimately is what we got to do. And that's calling for premium riders, and premium service for those riders. And so we've got to make sure we're doing a great job, always going back to that as a measuring stick, I think, if this organization is going to be strong for decades to come. So thank you.
You're welcome. Commissioner Scott?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I wanted to thank staff for the great presentations today, particularly the transit marketing one that was very, very, very good. Do we need Commissioner Johnson, his comments this morning, do we need to have any discussion or any action on that?
I was suggesting that we take that up with the planning committee.
Okay.
This coming month. We'll put it on the agenda.
And the reason that I did not bring it forward as an action item, Commissioner Scott, is because those things need to be on our agenda officially, and I knew that we were going to be discussing it in one of our committees first.
Got it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And then my last comment is just kind of teeing off on Commissioner Egger's comments there, is we're looking at increasing riders. I'd like to see our fare box recovery by route. So we know, if we financially benchmark each route, so we know what our high performers are versus our low performers. I'd kind of like to see that broken down so we know, well, not necessarily what routes we're making money on, or because that's not the goal, but which ones are costing us the most money to operate, and perhaps how we can change that dynamic a little bit. So maybe it's a finance committee presentation.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Barkley,
Yes.
please turn on your mic.
It was on, I somehow it went away.
There you go.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to say congratulations to Stephanie on her retirement, to Trish on her promotion, and to our drivers rather, who participated, and our maintenance people who participated in the APTA International Bus Rodeo. I think we had a great showing by our people, and I'm very proud of what we're doing in that regard, being up near the top, and hopefully we can continue with that.
Excellent. And from my report, I have 3 things that I would like to share with the board and anyone else who might be interested that I learned during the bus conference that I attended a few weeks ago. It was fascinating to me to learn that nationwide transit systems, public transit systems, are morphing into mobility, innovation, and management to become mobility integrators. I thought that was really fascinating, and I wasn't quite sure I understood what that meant, so I think that would be a really interesting subject matter for a presentation here at our board meeting, so everyone can understand how exciting the future looks for public transportation. The other thing I thought was really fascinating and just really hit me as incredibly profound was that China built a section of rail in 9 hours with 1,500 people. I don't know if that is impactful to anyone else, but I found it just fascinating and figured, well, if they could do it, we sure ought to be able to do something as a solution in our region, right? And the last thing, Brad, this is Ray, pay attention, please, because this might be for you to follow up on, if you don't mind. I learned from the federal transit person that we are one of the 6 states that have not submitted all of the paperwork to receive our Transit Safety Program certification that is required by the federal government in order to get federal funding, and that we must get that in before September in order to meet the deadline of April 2019. So I'm sharing that with you, as well as our board and Brad, to follow up with Secretary Gwynn. I'm sure you'll hear me say this again at T-BARTA, because there's a funny little thing that happens when you take your eye off the ball. Bad stuff can fall through a crack, and I'm sure that our FDOT folks are working on it, but I would like to be 100% sure. Okay? That's the end of my report. Is there anything else, Brad, for the good of the order? All right, thank you, everyone, for a very fabulous meeting. We are adjourned until next time. Thank you. Debbie and Ray, could you hang out for a minute? I have a couple of things to.
Every once in a while,
We'll see when I stand up.
Start the meeting after now? Technically at noon, but I think
Oh, we can do it now.
there's a reschedule of the one-on-one prep for this meeting, so I wasn't sure, do we still have a reason to meet?
I don't think we do.
Okay.
I mean, I heard, made some good comments about the chamber, also about, it's not everybody in Hillsborough, I don't think.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is.